So we're here today to talk around cyber resiliency and what that looks like from a business resiliency perspective. My name's Costa and I am a cybersecurity consultant here at Enable, and I'm joined with Jason from Vocus. Jason, do you mind introing yourself?
Yeah, nice to meet you. I'm Jason Godwin. I'm the solutions consultant here for Enterprise at Vocus, working within the enterprise product portfolio, as well as security layers are built in there as well.
So Jason, I know you have got a good history and background of working with a lot of different technologies across things like disaster recovery, backup, infrastructure and cloud, etc. How have you seen that evolve over recent years? And I guess what does that really look like from what your customers are trying to achieve with Vocus?
A lot of industries are starting to change their mentality around what they do within the IT infrastructure. Going back to when I first started out, it was site recovery. How do you recover from a site outage? But in recent years, it's really changed the language that people are starting to use now, because we've seen a lot more people going more of a cyber recovery conversation now rather than site outage. And there was a couple of stats that we saw before around cyber recovery is now becoming the number one aspect of an organization to recover from, because really, let's be honest, how often do you recover from a data center outage nowadays? They're so resilient, they're so highly available within their architecture. It's not just networking, it's power, it's cooling, it's efficiencies. These are really the key factors moving forward that we need to start challenging customers around now.
Brilliant. And I guess we were talking off camera about a statistic that we saw published around how cyber actual outages have got a higher impact than maybe some other outages that we're more aware of. Do you mind talking through those a bit?
Yeah, it's when we start speaking to customers about how are they affected when it comes to cyber, because an outage, a site outage, typical systems fail over instantly. And that's all well and good in a site outage. But when you come to cyber recovery, really you need to understand is, are you in a good, clean state? Is that data being replicated clean, good for you to recover from and get your business up and running quickly now?
On the backup side of the fence, I appreciate you're involved in a lot of those types of conversations here at Vocus, and again, your previous experience. What's the general focus for customers there with that backup piece? Is it that they're trying to be compliant to certain industry standards? Are they trying to meet certain SLAs or business level agreements that they've got with the customers of their own? Do you mind maybe walking me through that for you?
Yeah, a lot of customers, they've been in a state of as is. They've been in a good state, they've been running, but now they're starting to see these new technologies coming along and really understand that where they are now is not where they want to be. So they're starting to look into transitioning into this new modern era of backup and recovery. And cyber is key to that. But like when we look at the historics, it's always been, right, we're back up to an appliance and then that's safe. That's away from your primary environment. But now we're looking at multiple sites. We're looking at cloud architecture. We're looking at geo fencing away from your primary environment. There's lots of different challenges that we're seeing with these customers now. Yeah, from a compliance perspective, there's lots of new regulations that come into the ecosystem now, and they're ever evolving. One that I primarily worked with was the NIST framework. So how do you identify, detect, protect, recover, and analyze? And there's a new layer around that, around how you govern that process as well. So again, ever-evolving types of methodologies coming into the ecosystem. I could set that bar really high for customers to try and achieve.
A further question here to ask is, with the adoption of these backup strategies, where have you seen that these have evolved over time? And is there a bit of a difference between adopting technology versus actually executing on strategy?
It's a real key challenge for a lot of IT infrastructure managers around strategy, having a clear, defined strategy and goals to achieve, because their day-to-day job gets in the way of things quite often. So when I'm going and speaking to these guys, we need to outline what are the outcomes that they want to try and achieve with this new project. Is your current software providing that for you? Is your current hardware providing that for you? And then we can outline, right, your adoption of the technologies is going to be a journey. We need to get you on that curve of saying, right, we're in the initial phase with discovery, we're in implementation, we're into utilization. What part of that curve do you want to be on as of today? You probably already started that journey, but how do we get you along and get you to the clear end goal?
And the conversation we were having earlier with Jen was around working with vendors that help meet that type of strategy as opposed to having point technology pieces. So again, really reaffirming to hear. Thank you. Some of the advantages of the Cove product set there really are around reducing that time of effort that we were just talking about. One of the pieces of technology that we love to talk about is something called True Delta. So instead of really heavily relying on incremental backups that have got, of course, deduplication and compression efforts there, what we're seeing with True Delta is that the way that we take versions of that data from the agent that's deployed is that we're actually seeing a 60% smaller amount of data that needs to be backed up. So hence we can back up more regularly than somebody that might write to tape or even to cloud every week, every night, whatever that might be. And of course, smaller backups mean we can also restore more effectively and more quickly because there's less to bring back down onto the network as well.
So immutable and air-gapped backups are now almost mandated from an organizational standpoint. How does Enable bring those to the market?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And actually, if we start, we'll not completely disregard immutable backups at this point in time, but let's start with the actual architecture itself. So one of the disadvantages of, we'll say, legacy backup solutions of the past is that they've always had some reliance on having something on-prem, whether that's at another data center, whether that's a point-to-point link that's copying that data over. Whereas the first thing that Enable focused on with Cove is baking in a security-based architecture from the very beginning. So one, it's cloud-focused and it's in our data centers. So we are the ones that are then taking the priority to secure that customer's backup data on their behalf. So it's a thing that they no longer need to worry about themselves. And we've then got things like our SOC 2 certifications to be able to prove that those data centers are very secure. Obviously, data is secured in transit via AES encryption and similar technologies. So the outcome there to begin with is that the platform itself is secure. So we shouldn't have anybody being able to access that customer's backups in the first place. Now contrast that to where we look at those legacy backups. What's the first point of attack that an adversary might go after? They might start modifying those backups. They might start deleting them. And so back to that point of why we have immutable backups in the first place, or that 3-2-1 methodology, is because they were a target that are on-prem. Now, that's, of course, less of a concern, but it doesn't mean that it isn't still a concern. So one of the things that we do here at Enable with the Cove backup solution is, yes, we're backing up to cloud. Yes, you choose whether you want that to be hourly, daily, based on your RPOs and RTOs, based on what the customer requirements are. But regardless of what configuration you as the customer set up, you get what we call fortified backups. That means that we're taking a copy of your data, that backup data, in a read-only format that we're securing, that only permitted Enable employees have gotten access to. So should the worst case happen, we don't just have immutability of backups that can't be modified in the cloud, but then we have got another copy of that, hence it being called fortified, that only certain members have got access to. So kind of closing that immutability and that air gap story, we've got multiple layers, similar to that 3-2-1 methodology in our cloud, where we, for customers, can say, yes, we've got a copy of your backups. Yes, we've got a second, tertiary, whatever copy they want there. But more importantly, we've got one that is the break glass scenario that we can only access if they need it in the worst case scenario and get us to help them recover as well. Some other aspects of that as well, and ultimately link back to the style of ransomware attacks, is that we deploy things like honeypots in our environment as well. So if we see that a customer is being targeted, view it as a tripwire. Send that customer a notification to say somebody is actively trying to target your backups. So even though they're safe and secure right now, you've clearly got some adversary in your environment, some active threat that you either want to handle to get rid of, or again, work with us to get rid of within your environment using our Adlumin MDR and incident response services. So there's a nice little tie in there. But then, as with things progressing the way they are, we've adopted AI modeling for things like critical change configuration. So if my account is compromised for whatever reason, and let's just say I have the ability with the role-based admin controls to modify a backup schedule, if that's not normal for me to make changes, that's the type of thing that we're using AI to say, hey, that behavior for that user isn't normal. Notify, prevent, make sure that those backups are secure. But again, keeps coming back to that immutability conversation. Absolute worst case scenario, Enable have still got a mutable, air-gapped, fortified copy of your backups.
So are there any examples that you can provide to us really around somewhere where you've gone into a customer base and really driven those outcomes with the customer?
So Enable have published quite a few case studies around our technologies, but there's a couple that stand out for me. And this particular one is a customer that's got about 6,000 endpoints, 1,500 servers, and they use a variety of Enable technologies, but they do use that Cove technology as well. Now, one of the things that they have said, and I've said this a few times today, is that it just works, and they've been able to recover files, sites, infrastructures whenever the need has taken. So to me, having that almost the proof in the pudding, not just the POVs that I've been part of, but to actually see a customer that's been using it in anger for real world environments to be able to prove that, for me, that's a great use case, and we'll share that case study as part of the collateral following on from this video. But there's another customer use case for me, which is fantastic as well, which bridges the gap across our technology stacks. And it's where a customer was actually onboarding with our managed detection and response service. And during the first 6 hours of that onboarding, we detected that there was an active threat in the environment. So the MDR service picked up on it. The MDR service, of course, was able to kick that adversary out, stop any impact from actually taking place. But the customer's response was, that's great, it's proved the value of the MDR service. It proved its value within the first 6 hours. But it then proved the value to them of, should the worst case have happened, they had confidence in the Cove product that they would have been able to restore quickly and efficiently. But again, it goes back hand in hand to our three-way messaging there, right? We've said about before an attack, during an attack, and after an attack. We came in during an attack and we stopped it, but had the worst case happened and they weren't looking at the MDR service with us, they still would have had that recovery part of that attack as well. So really great case studies and something that we'll share as collateral after this video.
That's amazing to hear. And I think from my use cases as well is around that scalability piece as well, to be able to grow as the business and organizations grow as well, because their goalposts are going to move. The organizations, when you talk around use cases going up to those multiple thousands of hosts and endpoints, that's going to be really key for a lot of customers to understand. We are businesses, we are organizations, we want to grow, and how can we grow with you at the same time?
Yeah, and scalability is one of the main reasons that we put Cove in the cloud in the first place. One of the common challenges for people is managing their backups, keeping them watered, keeping them fed, making sure they're backing up on time, making sure the services haven't failed, whatever that might be. Remove that level of complexity and it's scalable. So if it is just a case of onboarding another SaaS product or an Office 365 environment via the APIs, nice and easy. If it's a case of doing a recovery to a SharePoint using that methodology, again, not having to spin up separate infrastructures and manage them to do so, it makes it easier for the customer. And so as they grow, they don't have to worry about reinvesting in a different backup and security program. They've got it all baked in. We can scale with them, as of course you guys can as well.
Amazing capabilities.
So thank you very much for joining us for this insightful session on cyber and business resiliency and how our backup strategies can affect those. If I were to ask you to take anything away from this video, is something really simple. Come and try Cove for yourself. We're not talking about an in-depth proof of value or proof of concept. Deploy one VM, let us back it up, see how quick and effective that true Delta technology works. But more importantly, let us go through that recovery process so that you can gain the confidence that so many of our customers do in the ability to restore effectively. Again, thank you so much for joining. We'll see you next time.